was a suspected Russian agent. They used that person's work product to get a warrant against an American citizen on 4 different occasions. They never informed the court of this exculpatory evidence.
I've been through all the documents at least one time now, and I'll give you some of the highlights from the early stuff. The most important of all the documents is what I call the September 2017 confessional. A year after he was fired, terminated by the FBI, Christopher Steele sat back down by the agents, and he described his motives, his tactics, what he did. And there are some bombshell revelations. First off, his motive for going to the news media and creating the false Russia collusion narrative during the 2016 election was because the email scandal had come and reared its head again against Hillary Clinton. He was concerned it was going to hurt Hillary Clinton's chances, so he put the Russia story out there to help kind of distract from her scandal.
Point.
Okay, thank you for joining us out here again. And for the past several episodes, we have been looking at the 2020 election. Obviously, all of the baseless claims surrounding the 2020 election, just silly claims. And now we're going back in history a little bit, and then we're going to bring it back up to date. So what we're going back through is the Russiagate. And it's been well known to people who watch the right-wing media that they haven't had anything. This has been well known for a while. That everything they got was basically made up or completely illegal. But when Trump was walking out the door, he decided to declassify the FBI files, so hopefully it would set the record straight. So this is back in the news again. And I don't know what it is, but it's like people who watch media that's on the left, you can't get them to believe certain things unless their media puts it up. If their media puts it up, then it will become true. Then it will become gospel. So what I think is real interesting about this is I got Glenn Greenwald, who was obviously fairly left-leaning as a journalist, and he's talking about the Russiagate, the Mueller investigation, over a year ago when Mueller came out with his report. Now, he used to be an attorney, so I believe that he has pretty good spot-on views on how this stuff actually works. So let's hear what he has to say.
Doubt from the outset that this was no ordinary investigation. The Democrats, the CIA, their allies in the media who believed in this conspiracy theory got exactly the prosecutor that they wanted, who everybody agreed was the man of the highest integrity and competence. He assembled a vast team of very aggressive prosecutors, FBI agents, forensic accountants, intelligence analysts. He had unlimited resources, the entire apparatus of the U.S. surveillance state at his disposal, and 22 months to dig as deeply as he could dig to find out the answers to whether those conspiracy theories were or weren't true. You can't get a more sweeping or comprehensive investigation than that. And he went through systematically each of the prongs of the conspiracy theories and found either that the evidence did not establish that they were true, or in some cases found the opposite, that in fact there was no evidence to support the theory at all and that the theory was simply false.
Well, if you go back and look,
opposite, that in fact there was no evidence to support the theory at all and that the theory was simply false.
Okay. I absolutely love how Glenn kind of breaks this down, because he's talking about how the media propagated a conspiracy theory. And I'm sure that this happens more often than any of us really wish to recognize or like to admit. But the media propagated a conspiracy theory. They got the best investigator. He had as much resources as he could have at his disposal, And after 22 months, he really couldn't find anything, but the media on the left keeps on saying, oh, well, it just wasn't enough to impeach. He could still get charged when he gets out of office. They just can't charge a sitting president because, some office wrote an opinion saying that they couldn't charge a sitting president. Well, impeachment is how you charge a sitting president. And if their case was so solid, and the only problem is that he was president, then why are they impeaching him now? Why don't they just go back and charge him with all that stuff they found in the Russiagate collusion? Probably because they didn't actually find anything. That's probably what happened. So who else was tied up in the Russiagate collusion? Because you had Oliver Stone, and you had Carter Page, and then you have this gentleman that I have been following his case since early 2020 because it's really, really interesting. His name is Michael Flynn, and he used to be one of the top security intelligence defense people in the United States. So I'd like to know what he has to say. And I'm going to show you a couple of clips that are kind of going to run together. But before this kind of got started, the interviewer asked him, when do you think your name went up on the radar? When do you think that the power establishment started looking at you, Mike Flynn, and they were kind of like, we might want to get rid of this guy. Let's see what his answers are.
Well, if you go back and look at my testimony, just look at the opening statement. And so there's sort of like when they put Mike Flynn up on the chalkboard and they start writing down all the things that they don't like about him, that's probably check number one, because that was the single foreign policy initiative, disastrous initiative that the Obama administration took on with the number one state sponsor of terrorism. What do you think about ISIS? What do you think about ISIS? What do you think about ISIS? To everyone, and I was at the end. And so, and all those guys basically said, they're defeated, they're on the run, we really have them, down on their knees. And they got to me and I said, it's expanding and it's getting worse, essentially. And I said that, said that because that's what I believed and that's what I saw as at that time, as the senior military intelligence officer in the Department of Defense. But under the Obama administration, you towed the line. You towed the line. And if you were dissenting, and as a 3-star or a 4-star, you're a political appointee. Really, the last promotion you get is to 2-star in the military. Most people don't even understand that. Everything after that is a political appointment. So Barack Obama had to appoint me, which he did twice for 2 different jobs. And then I had to get Senate confirmed for those 2 positions, Assistant Director of National Intelligence and then the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So, you put me in the job. Did you put me in the job because you think I was going to, kiss up to you? And that's not my style. Not my style. So,
Well, General Flynn, just for me personally, I really like your style. So, he was head of the national intelligence of, defense intelligence, whatever those big titles were that he just said. That's pretty high up there. I would imagine that somebody like him probably has a whole lot of useful knowledge about how the world works in general. And if you wish to go, watch this interview, I really think you should. Because the thing that struck me the most is he talks about his children and his grandchildren. And if we keep going where we're going here in America, he can see where that's going to lead them. And this is why he's speaking out. This is why he's speaking up. So let's hear some more of what he has to say.
What do you think there, General Flynn? And I'll tell you what, that probably started the conversation, I'm sure, in the Oval Office to say, get rid of that guy. We can't have him. Can't have him. Who was caught up with a liaison with a Chinese spy. So if you scratch the the window pane, because there's a little bit of ice on it. You scratch it, and the warmth of your finger that circle grows and grows and grows. How many more people are in that position? Okay? How many more people are in that position? How many more members of Congress? How many people in government and other institutions? How many people in academia? I mean, we know about the Harvard, the head of the bio program at Harvard, whenever it was, a year ago, right?
All right. So that really caught my attention. Michael Flynn was basically singled out, targeted. They were going to get rid of him because he had a dissenting opinion. He told the truth. I mean, God forbid that we tell the truth. So they singled him out. They're like, we got to get rid of this guy. The rest of that is history. But I think what he just said was really, really interesting, that there's some congressman who got caught with a Chinese spy. And even though he was going to be a gentleman and not mention this guy's name, I just had to go to Google and look it up. And so this gentleman's name is Eric Swalwell. And we're about to see a little clip of him here in just a second. Let's watch this little clip.
Now, Mr. Barr, are you investigating Donald Trump for commuting the prison sentence of his longtime friend and political advisor, Roger Stone?
No.
Why not?
Why should I?
Well, let's talk.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about this. This was way after the FBI knew that it was all BS. That congressman should have known it was all BS. This is solely a political move. You can see how Bill Barr's just sitting there like, that's silly. It's ridiculous. And it really is. The whole thing was circus and charade. It was all theater. It was all theater to make people who hate Donald Trump hate him even more. And everybody else who felt like Donald Trump was being honest and all of these other people were lying, well, that hardened their feelings. Because the whole idea of this is to get people in America to fight with one another. I mean, that's really the whole idea of how subversion works. That's exactly what foreign intelligences do when they go into a country and they're trying to destabilize the government. That's exactly what the United States has done to countless countries. That's exactly what they've done. So, here's Eric grilling General Barr, Attorney General Barr. This is after Eric clearly knows what has happened with the FBI and what happened with the investigation. But this is before it comes out that he had a liaison with the Chinese spy. It was before then. So let's just go in and do some digging, because I like to dig. And I found this letter right here from Senator Rick Scott to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. And basically what it's talking about is according to reports, a spy for Communist China Ministry of State Security, contact with representatives several years, very close relationship, served as a liaison between political donors, Representative Swalwell. Okay, so apparently this Chinese spy served as a liaison, was, from the best I can read this, bringing him political donations. I don't know how true that is. This is just what's written on here. Anyways, Rick Scott is asking, hey, maybe you might think it's a good idea to pull him off of the House Intelligence Committee. That might be like a smart move. Okay. So, Nancy Pelosi got this letter December 9th, 2020. And I don't know how she actually answered this letter in writing, but I did find a clip on the internet because Google makes me infinite knowledge. I found a clip of Nancy Pelosi being asked about this Eric Swalwell. And let's see what she has to say. I thought this was interesting as well.
No. Jack?
Thank you. You've long been concerned about China. You have a history here,
Yes.
seat on the Intelligence Committee here. Are we to a point now, after what happened with Mr. Swalwell, maybe where there should be background checks for all staff and interns before we serve? Obviously, staff who serve on the Intelligence Committees and Armed Services Committee have that, but should that be universal? And what are your concerns?
So what should be universal, Chad, on this?
Background checks for aides or interns across the board for all members, all staff and interns on Capitol Hill after the concerns about Mr. Swalwell.
Well, I don't have any concern about Mr. Swalwell. There are those in the Congress who believe, and I am among them, that we should be seeing what influence the Chinese. I've been fighting them, as you know, for over 30 years in terms of their undue influence at universities in our country and the overtures they try to make to members of Congress. In terms of Mr. Swalwell, in the spring of 2015, the leadership of the House and the committee were informed that overtures from a Chinese person were being made to members of Congress. When that was made known to the members of Congress, it was over. That was the end of any communication with those people. So it isn't. I think we should make sure that everybody knows what they are being subjected to. But I don't know that it means that we have to background checks for every intern who comes into the Capitol. I do think that it's unfortunate that Mr. McCarthy is trying to make an issue of this when his leaders, we all found out at the same time, the Republican leadership, and that several members had been approached.
Were you briefed on this?
We were all, at the same moment, the House, Republican and Democratic leaders, and the leadership of the committee were briefed at the same moment. Make sure you know that, because he keeps going around saying, when did they know? We knew when they knew. And at that time, that was the end of it. But you know what he's trying to do? He's trying to deflect attention from the fact that he has QAnon in his delegation over there. And that, I think, is a danger in terms of our debate here about what the possibilities are for an undue influence to members of Congress.
All right, you know what I absolutely loved about that? Did you see how fidgety she was getting there towards the end? And then she was talking about this whole thing is just to distract from that he has QAnon over there in his cabinet. Well, that's really strange because I thought QAnon was some crazy conspiracy theory. But it's in the cabinet of some of these Republicans. That's just weird. Because it's statements like that fuel both sides of the conspiracy theories. It really is. It gives credibility to the people who are coming up with them, and, it kind of throws off the scent. And they wish to throw off the scent. What I thought was really, really interesting was how she answered. Because this guy was asking a pretty common sense question. He's like, hey, since members of the House and the Congress have been approached by China, and take this into account, you would have to blatantly be really confident about how much you owned of the government already to just start walking around to Congress members and members of Congress and saying, hey, can we bribe you? Are you sure we can't bribe you? You're not going to go tell anybody that we offered to bribe you, are you? I mean, in my opinion, you would have to be overly confident in your control of that government's criminal justice system. And that's just my opinion. But so this gentleman's asking for some really common sense stuff like, hey, why don't we put some measures in place like, I don't know, background checks? I mean, you got to have them to own a gun, so surely you should have to have them to go work for members of Congress with top secret clearance and top secret information that could just be on their desk. Clearly. No, she wasn't down for that idea. She was like, nah, we're gonna steer away from that one. And I would wonder why she did this, except I did a little more digging, and I saw that back in 2018, she actually was caught having a Chinese chauffeur who had been driving her around for about 20 years. You think they drove around all that time and didn't talk about politics? That's pretty interesting. I mean, Pelosi's always ran on a tough on China kind of stance. From California, she went over, had some kind of theatrics over in China in the late 80s, early 90s, especially right after Tiananmen Square, because she had pretty freshly gotten into Congress. So I find all of that really interesting. Just the entire thing, how long she had a spy in her midst, how quickly she was to dismiss what the reporter, common sense type of stuff. We make people go through background checks to get firearms. You would think they would have to go through background checks to be senators' aides, where they could be around top secret information. But apparently, she just doesn't believe that we need that type of security here in the United States, which really makes me wonder why. I really have to ask myself what's going on there. And then, this is my absolute favorite part about Lindsey Graham. I started off with him, so I'm going to end it with him. But you just tell me, do you really think that he's asking for the small mom and pop, nickel here, dime there donations when he's talking about this? This is at the end of the Fox interview.
I'm getting overwhelmed. LindseyGraham.com, help me. They're killing me money-wise. Help me. You did last week. Help me again.
Well, Rosie should be able to decide, and Barbara Streisand should decide, I guess, of South Carolina.
I find that absolutely interesting. I don't think that he's begging the American people. I don't know who he's begging, but he's obviously begging somebody openly, publicly, with a very, very big checkbook. That's just the way I see it. That's just the way I perceive it. Anyways, stay free in your mind, because that's about the only freedom we're probably going to get for a while. If you feel like this is important, if you wish to be a part of conspiring to make a better world, please like, share, subscribe, pass it on. I am just conspiracy, and I just wish to conspire with you good people of the earth to leave a better world for future generations than the world we all grew up in. Peace. My bad. I accidentally told you guys that Nancy Pelosi had the spy driver for 20 years. I was incorrect on that. Before I even publish the video, I'm going to go ahead and make a redaction right here. It was Dianne Feinstein who had the driver for 20 years who was a Chinese spy, not Nancy Pelosi. Okay, let me be very clear about that. But I do find it interesting in an article, Nancy Pelosi is actually talking about how the Chinese threat is not as serious as the Russian threat. So, that to me is kind of like throwing misinformation out there, hoping that people will believe it. Now, I got a couple of things here. This is from the Homeland Security and Governmental Agencies Commission. And so it's a Senate commission. that basically looks over what the government's doing, what people inside of the government are doing. And I find a couple of things pretty interesting about this report. So I would like to go over them because I never made a Biden Chinese connection. I'm not making a Joe Biden connection. This is all, everything I've seen has to do with Hunter Biden. So here are some of the highlights. In addition to the over $4 million paid by Burisma for Hunter Biden's and Archer's board membership, Hunter Biden, his family, and Archer received millions of dollars from foreign nationals with questionable backgrounds. Questionable backgrounds. This is an official United States government committee report. Okay, so this isn't hyperbole. This isn't, the news making it one way or another. I'm just reading to you what's coming off of here. Hunter Biden received $3.5 million wire transfer from Elena, whatever her name is, the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Hunter Biden received $100,000 from Mr. Dong in China. We'll actually speak about that later. He went on a spending spree with James Biden and Sarah Biden. James Biden is Joe Biden's brother. Sarah Biden, I believe, is his wife. Hunter Biden paid non-resident women who were nationals of Russia or other Eastern European countries and who had appeared to be linked to an Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. Yeah, that's something that they have in this report. Let's see what else they have in this report, because I found this report to be very, very interesting. Hunter Biden and his family had extensive financial connections to Yi somebody, Gangwon Dong, and other Chinese nationals. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to read some of these names. I think it's interesting to note that the part on China and what Hunter Biden has done in China of this document starts on page 71. I believe it ends on page 84. Yes, 84 is where they come to their conclusion. So there are a couple of things that I wish to point out here. When it talks about the extensive financial connections they had that I kind of started this off with, if we go down here just a little bit, it'll show where they set up over $100,000 account, which, they don't really know why. Like, there's no real official reason as to why that was set up. Right here on page 74, it talks about Hunter Biden's position of influence and connections to Chinese business interests, which were further strengthened while his father was vice president, most likely appeared to Yi, a man who the New York Times has since described as wanting access to the corridors of power in Washington. So they're being straight up, open and honest. Hey, we're wanting to get into Washington. We wish to infiltrate it. It's no secret here. The only thing is are we going to make them do something about it? Down here, it talks about Hunter Biden stated that he began working on the deal for Yi that involved a $40 million investment in a natural gas project on Monkey Island in Louisiana that reportedly fell through the following year. Around the same time that Hunter Biden began this work, Yi raised concerns with Hunter Biden that one of his associates, Patrick Ho, was under investigation by U.S. law enforcement. Hunter Biden subsequently agreed to represent Ho. And just to put this into perspective, this man has already been convicted and is serving time in federal prison right now. So it seems like a lot of the people that Hunter Biden has surrounded himself with, especially Chinese nationals, seem to be criminals, not just here in the United States, but a lot of them also at home. 3. Financial transactions by these companies illustrate a complex web of corporate entities, money transfers, and potential criminal financial activity. So here's the Senate Commission report saying, we've looked at all of this confidential documents, and we believe that there's potential financial crimes, financial frauds that are going on between these corporate entities that Hunter Biden's a part of and these other Chinese nationals. Records examining transactions by Gong Wen and his associates explained, we opt to include wires which appear to be conducted for investment purposes, as we believe that fund movement is ultimately conducted in an effort to layer funds. Conclusion: unusual movement of funds between various entities with a complex ownership structures, at times involving funds originating from Chinese state-owned enterprises, SOEs, Chinese-based entities registered with a high-risk tax haven country, and politically exposed persons, PEPs. It is to note that the fund movement appears to be an effort to introduce foreign funds from unknown sources into the United States by investing in large projects and by purchasing luxury goods and properties. Total filing amounts to $902,200,297. Really close to $1 billion. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying this stuff looks really, really suspicious. And it's coming out of the own documents that the government produces. And this is where our government might be kind of transparent. In conclusion, this is a conclusion that comes from talking about how the media portrays a lot of this stuff that's going on in government. So here's a conclusion of this. Many of the allegations Democrats have made against Republicans that they are relying on foreign disinformation, that they are carrying out a politicized investigation in an effort to bring down their political opponents, and that they are working covertly with the executive branch to quickly release sensitive information for political reasons reflect the very pattern of behavior that Democrats themselves have engaged in and continue to engage in on a regular basis. Let us not forget how the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for the Steele dossier, which was created by a foreign national, a former MI6 employee, and is based on Russian government sources. Some of those Russian government sources were part of the Russian presidential administration and supported Hillary Clinton. Moreover, in January 2017 and February 2017, the FBI received reporting from the intelligence community that assessed portions of the Steele dossier were the product of a Russian disinformation campaign. That's no surprise that the Russian intelligence services were also aware of the dossier in early 2016 before the FBI opened Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Thus, the Steele dossier was the perfect vehicle for disinformation to affect multiple elections and to sow discord and chaos. Yet Democrats held no qualms about disseminating information from the dossier far and wide, reading parts of the dossier into the congressional record and using its allegations as the basis for years of investigation and false claims against the Trump administration. Moreover, since the chairman made public in April 2020 the fact that the Steele dossier contained Russian disinformation, it does not appear that any Democrats have commented upon this revelation or expressed concern about their previous reliance on Russian disinformation. Here, the Democrats are again relying on unverified foreign disinformation to falsely accuse their political rivals of doing the same. And the reason I think that is so important is because right there, they're basically saying that they do this to each other. Now, I'm going to leave with Nancy Pelosi telling you the exact same thing. And after that, just a couple of clips from the FBI on what their concerns are about China after Nancy Pelosi downplayed it to the AP. Anyways, sorry about making this a little extra long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, like, share, subscribe again. I'm Just Conspiracy. Let's keep conspiring to make a better world, or at least keep the rights we got. Peace.
You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and if they see it's reported in the press that this, and this, so they have that validation that the press reported.
Some websites are sending around this video as proof the Democrats made up the assault allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. That is fiction. The video, while real, actually shows Pelosi last year accusing Republicans of using wrap-up smears. She was not saying that it's a go-to strategy for Democrats.
Another tool China and the Chinese Communist Party use to manipulate Americans is what we call malign foreign influence. Now, traditional foreign influence is a normal, legal, diplomatic activity typically conducted through diplomatic channels. But malign foreign influence efforts are subversive, undeclared, criminal, or coercive attempts to sway our government's policies, distort our country's public discourse, and undermine confidence in our democratic processes and values. China is engaged in a highly sophisticated malign foreign influence campaign, and its methods include bribery, blackmail, and covert deals. Chinese diplomats also use both open, naked economic pressure and seemingly independent middlemen to push China's preferences on American officials. Ultimately, China doesn't hesitate to use smoke, mirrors, and misdirection to influence Americans. And I will note that the pandemic has unfortunately not stopped any of this. In fact, we've heard from federal, state, and even local officials that Chinese diplomats are aggressively urging support for China's handling of the COVID-19 crisis. Yes, this is happening at both the federal and state levels. Not that long ago, we had a state senator who was recently even asked to introduce a resolution supporting China's response to the pandemic. The punchline is this: all of these seemingly inconsequential pressures add up to a policymaking environment in which Americans find themselves held over a barrel by the Chinese Communist Party.
Do you get any sense that China is targeting the November elections? Do you have any special concerns about that?
Well, I would say that, of course, China's malign foreign influence campaign targets our policies, our positions, 24/7, 365 days a year. So it's not an election-specific threat. Mm-hmm. It's really more of an all-year, all-the-time threat. But certainly that has implications for elections, and they certainly have preferences that go along with that.